time is very short, and hopefully there'll be time for a question or two afterwards. So I'll get right to the subject. Which is on the dreadful subject of organ pillaging in China. The People's Republic of China is unique among about 200 countries today in that its organ transplant commerce is state-run rather than a criminal offense done by unscrupulous surgeons. As you said, Dr. Khan, in mid-2006, David Matus and I did, as volunteers, investigated independently claims of forced organ harvesting from Falun Gong practitioners across China. We released 2 reports and in 2009, a book entitled Bloody Harvest. We concluded that since 2001, the Beijing Party state had directed a network of forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience, primarily Falun Gong, killed for their organs. They were then sold to wealthy patients in China and foreign organ tourists, as the term goes. We concluded from 18 kinds of evidence, and I should probably confess that I was a prosecutor for almost 10 years, so I should know something about evidence, that beyond any doubt, between the years 2001 and 2005, about 41,500 organs were sourced from Falun Gong practitioners, prisoners of conscience. Normally, all of their vital organs were removed and their bodies were then cremated. Canada's much loved and highly respected Rabbi Emeritus, Dr. Reuben Volka, who now unfortunately is gravely ill, wrote, quote, "This is murder, brutal murder, taking organs from the bodies of live people, even though there was irrefutable evidence that this was happening. Chinese authorities denied it. They are liars as well as murderers," close quote. Ethan Gutman, author of a book called The Slaughter, later placed the persecution of Falun Gong, Tibetan, Uyghur, and House Christian communities in context. He explained, and by the way, he spent 7 years researching this book, so he's done a huge amount of research. He explained his best estimate that the organs of 65,000 Falun Gong and, quote, 2,000 to 4,000 Uyghurs, Tibetans, and House Christians were pillaged in the 2000-2008 period. Matus, Gutman, and I released an update in 2016. It provided an examination of transplant programs at hundreds of hospitals across China, drawing on medical journals, websites, and deleted websites found in archives. We concluded cautiously that over 2 decades, the party state had directed a network of organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience, primarily Falun Gong since 2001. The US Congress and the European Parliament passed nearly identical resolutions condemning Beijing for these crimes against humanity. Organ pillaging from Uyghurs, in fact, preceded that from Falun Gong. Dr. Enver Tohti, a Uyghur who now lives in the West, has detailed how in 1995, as a general surgeon in Urumqi Hospital in Xinjiang, he was sent to an execution ground to remove the kidneys and liver from a living prisoner. 2019, Tohti publicized a photograph of the human organ transportation green path, in quotation marks, at Urumqi Airport in Xinjiang, which expedites the transport of organs to global recipients. Xi Jinping himself has been quoted as saying that Uyghurs should be shown, quote, absolutely no mercy, close quote. Now, the United Kingdom-based Independent People's Tribunal into Forced Organ Harvesting from Prisoners of Conscience in China was instituted by the International Institute, which I'm speaking on behalf of today. And I'm going to invite all of you to please join it at the end of this talk. We would love to have you. It heard 54 witnesses on the persecution of Falun Gong members and the harvesting of their organs. In delivering the unanimous judgment, Sir Geoffrey Nice, oh, by the way, this is the report. You can see it's 604 pages, the final report. So they really left no stone unturned. And of course, it was horrifying what they found under those stones. He concluded, despite silence from the party state and refusal to defend its role in organ commerce, the tribunal found there was enough evidence to reach a damning verdict. The tribunal concluded that Falun Gong members were the primary victims of the harvest, but that since 2017, a comprehensive DNA collection of every man, woman, and child from Xinjiang's indigenous Uyghur community has created a large pool of potential donors from which evidence of harvesting might later emerge. The incarceration since 2017 of up to 3 million, nobody knows exactly how many, Uyghurs in concentration camps has added to the concern that this has become a particularly vulnerable group. The tribunal's summary judgment reports, quote, "It has had no evidence that the significant infrastructure associated with China's transplantation industry has been dismantled, and the absence of a satisfactory explanation as to the source of readily available organs concludes that forced organ harvesting continues until today," close quote. The tribunal, assessing the anomalous data provided by the PRC, became convinced that the government's official statistics had been falsified, taking as credible that between 60 and 90,000 transplant operations are carried out each year now in China. The number of official eligible donors, they have a donor system, but you probably all know that the culture in China is such that people do not donate their organs. And in 2017, there were 5,100 alleged donors. The tribunal, therefore, concluded that there was a, quote, incomprehensible gap, leading to the conclusion that, quote, there must have existed another source of issue-type organs. The stark deduction was that there was a body of donors unidentified in the PRC material. I'm trying to just give you the highlights of this since it will be posted. The tribunal concluded by calling on governments and individuals, activists, and motivated politicians to decide for themselves whether crimes had been committed in the face of findings that, quote, whatever they might think is their duty in the face of any revealed wickedness of the kind shown in any finding that forced organ harvesting has happened or is continuing to happen in the PRC. So what might Canada and other countries, of course, do about this? I have a number of conclusions. I'll just give you a couple of them. The Beijing Party state does not hesitate to use trade and business incentives to silence governments and individuals when they can, nor does it hesitate to continue to undermine Western democracy and the values to advance its own objectives. Accordingly, here's a couple of suggestions. Canada and all rule of law nations must take all opportunities to condemn publicly the Beijing regime on its ongoing persecution of prisoners of conscience. Canada should join the half dozen or so countries that already ban travel to China for transplant surgery. I think that hopefully that's self-evident, and we've almost done it in Canada, and we're hoping we will do it soon, but it has not happened yet, which is very embarrassing to all of us who've been working on this issue. Canada should apply its Magnitsky laws and other targeted sanctions against any Chinese government official known to be involved in the persecution of organ harvesting. If we and other democracies show more commitment to our values, this despicable commerce might soon end. And let me just end by hoping there was time for a question or two, that invite all of you to please go on, you just go on my website, which I guess you saw on the screen, david-kilgour.com. You can quickly access the International Coalition website, and I hope you'll be sufficiently touched by what you see there, both your head and your hearts, that you will decide to join us. We would love to have you join our group, and I'm happy to tell you we're now in a number of countries, and I think our impact is growing thanks to people like yourselves who joined us in the past. Thank you very much. Any questions, most welcome, if there's time.
Questions for Dr. Kilgour, please go ahead and ask them. Let me see if in the Q&A. Were there any criteria used to select these forced organ donors, such as the terminally ill, victims of accidents, or were they all healthy people?
Excellent question. No, this is what we were struck by. We actually talked to a number of prisoners of conscience, Falun Gong primarily for David Matus and I, but a number of Uyghurs now we're trying to speak to as well. And we've heard stories that they were all tested every 3 months by doctors who would come into these camps, and there were about 350 camps we estimated when we were studying this. The doctors would examine everybody, look in their eyes, test their organs, but it wasn't because of they were concerned about their health. It was being done, they were convinced, and we were convinced, to see whether they'd be good organ donors. And Falun Gong was particularly good as an organ base because they didn't smoke or drink. A lot of them were young. And of course, I guess 28, I think, was the age that they liked best for donors. So, and we've got stuff in our report, which you can access, where we've had people phone hospitals across China, and we've had doctors say to us things like, oh yes, we have Falun Gong donors, they call them, if you want an organ. And it's just, I'm saying it's horrifying to all of us when we discover what's going on there. And of course, they do their utmost to try to pretend that it isn't going on. But I think, as Ethan Gutman has said, I think the intellectual argument is over now. We have shown, or people around the world have shown, that this is happening, and we've got to, all of us, try to get them to stop it.